That day, I decided I had to redefine failure.
Mm.
If you don't succeed at what you're immediately going after, in my book, you do succeed, because just in the act of trying puts you farther ahead and you haven't failed. The only real failure is not to try and not to give it your all.
Welcome to Women We Should Know with international speaker, mindset reset mentor, author, and your host, Leslie Michaels. With audacious honesty and candor, the Women We Should Know podcast presents the wisdom and life-empowering insights of women who are the embodiments of innovation and social evolution. Please join Leslie as she shares potent conversations that will inspire your personal and professional evolutions. Welcome back to Women We Should Know. I am extra excited today to be able to bring to you a woman that is the quintessence of what Women We Should Know was established for. The opportunity to bring to you the voices of women who don't color inside the lines, don't limit themselves to boundaries established by others that don't fit them. Women who help and reach out to other women in any number of ways. That is our purpose. That is our intention here at Women We Should Know. And I am ever so glad to welcome you to eavesdrop on our conversation today with the wonderful Mitzi Purdue. This is a woman with a unique background. She's the daughter of the co-founder and president of the Sheraton hotel chain. And she is also the widow of another business titan, Frank Purdue, the chicken guy, whose products are now sold in more than 50 countries, organic chicken in 50 countries. Mitzi's going to be sharing with us practical but little known success tips from her just published new book, The Frank Purdue Way, Small Steps to Super Success. And there's so much more to Mitzi. So without further ado, let me introduce you. Mitzi, thank you for joining us today.
Well, what a joy to be with you. And I adore the premise of the show, which is we can help each other. We can learn from each other.
We can, and we must.
Well, as a matter of fact, I have a motto. Well, and it's so on target with what you do. And my motto is that success is measured not by what you can get, but by what you can give.
I could not agree more.
Thank you.
Not agree more. Now, before we really get rolling, I have a tiny little tradition, a little Leslie tradition at the beginning of every episode. I enjoy asking my guests, what is the one thing that's not in your bio that you would be willing to share with our listeners today?
Well, I think I'm going to give an answer that's too easy. And that is, it's not in my bio yet because I haven't finished it yet. But I have the extreme privilege of writing a biography of Mark Victor Hansen, whom you know, even if you don't know that you know. Mark Victor Hansen is the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for selling 500 million books. There's no living author other than he and his co-author who've sold that many nonfiction books. And so it's just a privilege beyond imagination to get to spend, loads and loads of time with one of the best writers and the best marketers on the planet.
Wonderful. And not only the best writers and the best marketers, but an individual who, with his partner, his writing partner, created a focus of bringing some spark of goodness into people's consciousness around the world, who chose to bring a spark of encouragement.
Yeah, in fact, I start off the book with a question that I had in my own mind, which is, there's some people who say that that he's just a great promoter, which he is.
Mhm.
But the question I had in my mind is, which is he? Is he just the world's best promoter? Is he sort of like Howard Hill in The Music Man, somebody who's kind of a flim-flam artist?
Great analogy.
Or is he Saint Mark, like the apostle? Yeah, which is he? And I spend a couple of hundred pages interviewing. I think I'm up to like 125 people that I've interviewed so far. And I have written the second draft of the book. So it goes from page 1 to about page 150 so far. Looking at that question, because he's a very complex person. He's not Saint Mark, although I think he's kind of close to it, because he has his flaws. He had a failed marriage. He went bankrupt. He had a falling out with his co-author, and yet everything that looked like a failure, he learned so much from it that it sort of propelled him to ever higher heights. And I cherish the fact that somebody who's human and who's fallen in his face now and then picked himself up, moved on, learned from it, and shared his learnings. So to me, it's been just an unimaginable privilege to kind of crawl inside the mind of somebody who is such a success, kind of larger than life, but still human.
That is wonderful. And everything you just spoke of in terms of his traits are the traits we speak of here on Women We Should Know. The very traits that we encourage women to share with each other so that we can all be each other's upliftment.
Well, one of the premises of my life, which kind of, I'm seeing as I write about Mark Victor Hansen, is I think my career has been built on overcoming fear of failure. Because a good bit of my, first 3 decades, I didn't do the things that I wanted to do because I was so afraid of rejections and turn downs and falling in my face. But then one day I decided, that's not working for me. And if you're up for a story, I'll tell you what brought it to mind, that fear of failure and being crippled by it's just not a good idea.
I absolutely would love for you to tell that story. I was just getting ready to ask, what was the pivot moment?
All right, the pivot moment happened when I had a non-traditional career initially. I was, as you can clearly tell by looking at me, I was a rice grower, as in I grew rice, the thing that you eat with chopsticks. And that worked very well for somebody who was shy and not eager to get rejection, because it's really quite solitary. I mean, you spend 8-10-hour days walking the fields, and it's not a great deal of interaction. Well, I was going to say by coincidence, but it wasn't a coincidence. I did have a tenant farmer, and the tenant farmer was somebody who had an amazing story. He had an IQ that was over 200. That puts him 20 points higher than Einstein. In fact, there was an article about him in Psychology Today that talked about how the Stanford Binet IQ tests were calibrated. There were 40 kids that throughout the whole country that they were able to identify who had IQs over 200. And then they followed them to see what happened to them. And this is the article in Psychology Today, which happened to include my tenant farmer. All right, of the 40, almost all of them came to really unfortunate ends. Things would happen to them like, I don't know, suicides or car accidents that shouldn't have happened, or alcoholism that just did them in. And one of the things that I got out of this Psychology Today article was that, being super brilliant oftentimes means that it's hard to relate to other people and you're extraordinarily lonely. But they said there was one exception to all of this. It was a rice farmer in Northern California. And to protect the guilty, I'm going to make up a name for him, Peter Smith. By the way, he's gone to his great reward, so it wouldn't hurt anybody if I did give the real name, but still, I want to be respectful of his memory even.
Of course.
Well, Peter Smith had, like me, a somewhat solitary life. I think both of us were drawn to rice growing because you didn't have to interact with a whole lot of people.
Mhm.
And but he had a motivating force for his whole life, the sort of thing that his whole, everything that he did worked around this one dream that he had. And his dream was, he recognized that having so much intelligence was a real gift. And he wanted to give back. His thinking, and I knew him very well, because if you spend a lot of time walking with people in the fields, you just
Mhm.
talk and talk and talk. So I'm confident of what I'm saying. His goal in life, recognizing that he had been given this great gift,
Mhm.
was to give back to humanity, to use all this vast wisdom and intelligence that had come his way to make life better for others. And
Mhm.
he had planned to write a book, and it was going to be called Life, an Owner's Manual. And from age 20, when he got this idea, up until the time when I first met him, he was in his 60s, he had been collecting information. He had file drawers and cabinets of just information that he had been collecting. And the goal was to put it all together and just share the wisdom of the world with people, tell them how to have a better life. The only thing is, at age 68, my rice farmer tenant was diagnosed with terminal heart disease. They
Mm.
were afraid they couldn't keep him alive long enough to do quadruple bypass surgery. And we're talking 1978, by the way. And this guy's so smart and so well aware of statistics that he figured, I could have the surgery, but I'd be dead in 4 months anyway. I'm not going to do it. And that meant that he had a death sentence.
Mhm.
And any normal person who's told, you're going to die of heart failure, that's
Mhm.
got to be as depressing as can be. But for Peter, I think it was 1 degree worse, because his whole life had been focused on doing this one thing,
Mhm.
and he had never gotten around to doing it. Every year he was saying, if I study just a little bit more, I'll be able to
Mm.
write a better book. Well, I had something just, looking back on it, it seems almost miraculous, but I had heard of a diet and exercise program. It was called the Pritikin program, where you eat unrefined foods, you de-stress your life, you meditate, you exercise. I mean, you just do all the things that today we know you ought to do. It
Mhm.
wasn't as widely known back in 78.
Mhm.
I, his employer, sent him to the Pritikin clinic for a month. And
Mhm.
at the end of it, he had lost like 20 pounds. Before, he had been somebody who couldn't walk across the room without just crippling heart chest pains.
Mhm.
Now he could walk 5 miles and feel great about it. And his doctor said, this is a miracle. Your heart has revascularized. And he actually lived into his 90s.
Oh my.
Yeah, I mean, so that part's wonderful. But we're coming to the pivotal moment of my life that changed my life like a switch turning. I told him, Peter, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever heard in the world. Now you can write your book. And he said, yes, I'm just about to. It'll take just a little more research.
Mhm.
At that moment, it was perfectly clear to me that he never would. And on top of that, I also knew why he never would. And take it on faith what I'm about to say, but knowing the person well, I could put it all together. He was
Mhm.
afraid of failure. He
Right.
was afraid that if he wrote this book and it wasn't well received, that his whole life would have been meaningless.
Mhm.
I'm listening to this and thinking, oh no, he's fear of failure has done the one thing that's going to guarantee failure.
Mhm.
And for me, I actually wanted a career in writing and speaking
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
television and radio, and
Mhm.
I had never dared audition for any of them. I'd never dared send in articles,
Mhm.
because I was paralyzed by the idea of how awful it would feel to fail.
Right. Right.
Well, that day, I decided I had to redefine failure. Failure, and I've followed this ever since. Failure is not trying. If
Mm.
you don't succeed at what you're immediately going after, in my book, you do succeed, because just in the act of trying, You're going to practice. You're probably going to study. You're probably going to read books, maybe go to conferences, or today it would be, I don't know, taking Coursera or an internet course or something. Just the act of trying puts you farther ahead, and you haven't failed. The only real failure is not to try, not to give it your all. Well, I went from somebody who was almost too shy to enter a room. No, I was too shy to enter a room of strangers. In the space of about a year, I began submitting articles to the local newspaper. They got syndicated. I would write articles for local magazines, and some made it and some didn't. I got invited to be on a television show to talk about being a lady rice farmer. And that was kind of a stepping stone to having my own television show, which became syndicated to 76 stations. But it all switched when I was ready to put myself out there. And if I fail, not in my book, I haven't failed. I just, my answer when I get a turn down is next.
That's right. That's right. I love that story because, you write for Psychology Today on a regular basis. You are the student come the authority, and women express and present more often with fear of failure than men do.
In my experience, that's totally true. And you may know why it is. I don't, but I've in a lifetime, I'm soon to be 81 and proud of it. Woohoo! But in a lifetime of experience, I've seen that. I almost feel, well, I was once president of the oldest and largest farm women's organization. And by the way, that's another example of overcoming fear of failure, because I was kind of afraid to try for it. But then I thought, if I don't try for it, I will be fulfilling my definition of failure, which is not trying.
That's right.
So I'm still quite active in it because I'm part of the Past President's Council. But during my 2 years of being president, I had one goal for the organization, and that was to encourage and nurture women to be all they could be. And that meant encouraging women to, for example, take parliamentary procedure, to take speaking courses, to learn like the basics of networking. That, what good does it do to, like, I think of my friend Peter Smith. He didn't network, so he didn't even know, I doubt if he ever spoke with a publisher. So my experience as a past president of American Agri-Women is that women just blossom and thrive when there's some nurturing going on. And you know what, maybe in 2022, that's no longer so needed. I mean, maybe I'm talking about past history.
I'm sorry to say, Mitzi, you are not.
Darn.
That's why I'm here, so that we can begin to find ways to express that to each other. And
I mean, it's so powerful, which I'm going to circle back then to the book that I'm finishing up in Mark Victor Hansen. And his message, which is awfully close to my conclusion about life, is that the thing that holds you back is your attitude. If you believe in yourself, and if you are smart enough to surround yourself with people who push you forward, and maybe push us the wrong way, but encourage you, you can have so much better chance of being all you can be. Because I think there are very few people, there's some, but I think there's very few who can be all they can be without being surrounded by people who nurture and encourage them and inspire them.
I don't know that there's anyone who can be all they can be without the support of a circle, without the support of coaches and mentors and inspirations. And speaking of inspirations, I know when we spoke previously. You were also involved in another organization that put women forward. I remember the story of the handbags.
Oh, yes. Oh, I have unending love and a lifetime membership in Business and Professional Women's. I'm not sure what we call it, club or association now. I think there was a period when they weren't happy with the word club, but Business and Professional Women. Oh, I love them so much because when I had made up my mind that I was going to redefine failure and that I was going to put myself out there and that the only true failure is not to try, I joined Business and Professional Women's, and they had something called the Individual Development Program, in which they taught public speaking and parliamentary procedure. And that was a period in my life when I was, well, the teacher, I became friendly with her afterwards. She told me when she saw me come in the room that she had my number. She realized I was, in these exact quote, her words, that I was insufferably shy. And I really was, because she told the class, there might have been 12 people in the class. And she said, this first day, you're going to stand up and you're going to say your name and where you're from. But I recognize there's some people in this class who are kind of shy and that might be difficult. And I learned later she was thinking of me. All right. She said, this first class, you can hang on to the chair in front of you.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, but I really needed it because I was pretty sure I could say my name, but I wasn't sure that I could get out where I was from.
Well, that's brilliant. She didn't let you off the hook. You still had to stand up and speak, but at least you had the chair in front of you.
I loved that woman so much because she was so perceptive. Because I mean, I can remember sitting in my car outside the door of the room where the class would be held. So I'm outside the building, and it took me like half an hour to work up the courage to even go in. So that's how shy I was at that point. But then there's another part to that story, and that is, up to age 38, I had a really severe lisp. And by the way, I will this is going to circle back to the red handbag and helping women, but
I have complete faith.
All right, but the side story was whatever. I had a reason for being shy. And if you have a severe enough lisp, you not only hear it, you see it. And people that, yeah, I mean, your tongue's in the wrong place. And I had people, when I'd get to know them well, they'd tell me, gosh, when I first met you, I thought you were stupid. And so here I am walking around knowing that people are noticing my lisp. And so during that period where I decided to redefine failure, I decided I'm simply going to overcome this lisp. And I went to a speech therapist. The speech therapist said, and by the way, we're talking, I think 1978, maybe we're talking 1974, anyway, mid 70s. She said, oh, we don't have the tools to help somebody who's, if you are 7 years old, we could help you, but by the time you're 38, we can't do anything for you. Sorry. Well, since I had made up my mind I had to overcome this thing, I thought I'd get a second opinion. Exactly the same response. You know, we just don't have the tools to do anything for you. Nobody gets over a lisp at your age. So I went to a third one, same story, but with a slight twist. She said, I can't help you, but I'd be happy to take your money. And so for 3 times a week, for 9 months, I'd go there and no progress. I couldn't hear the difference. I couldn't see the difference. My tongue was so atrophied that you take for granted when you make an S, your tongue sort of vibrates against the roof of your mouth, and it's just deeply unconscious. If you've never used that muscle, it's just not there. So for 9 months, no progress at all. And then just the tiniest bit, I could begin to hear the difference. And then I knew what I was aiming for. And by a year, I had overcome my lisp. Well, now circling back to business and professional women's and the red bag. The red bag is a program of the business and professional women's, I'm going to say clubs, but I'm prepared to be corrected. Well, that is its name back then. The business and professional women's clubs, they had a program that continued for years, and it might continue still for all I know, because I still speak to BPW groups and love them with all my heart. They had a program called the Red Bag Program, and there's a pin that you could buy, and the price of the pin goes towards supporting this program. The pin says, "I helped a woman." And when you're in a room of, I don't know, at a convention, maybe you see 100 women wearing this thing. It's just so energizing. It focuses you. It's on something beautiful and good, because I kind of feel that when one woman does well, we all do well. And when one woman is, and when one woman is suffering, has no self-confidence, it's almost a crime when she can't be all she could be.
Right.
So I love the Business and Professional Women's Club's Red Bag Program.
That's wonderful. And I love your enthusiasm for supporting women, because right now we're in a crisis in terms of woman-on-woman incivility. It's been reported in Harvard Business Review, Forbes, across the board. And so I appreciate you speaking to everything you gained from these organizations where women shared support instead of competition.
To me, it's almost a question, very selfishly, of happiness, because when you're helping somebody, don't you feel great?
Exactly.
On the other hand, if you're in the process of taking your knife and sticking it between their ribs, are you feeling great? Probably not, unless you're 2% of the population that's a psychopath. And I kind of guess that they're not listening to us.
Right. And with the epidemic that's going on in the business world, it's far more than 2%. So
but then there's also a theory that I read in Psychology Today, because I love reading the magazine I work for. People with a certain amount of narcissism and psychopathy are drawn to positions of power.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I appreciate you sharing these stories of these wonderful women coming together to support each other. Now, you are still in the workplace, and as you shared, you're coming up on your wonderful 81st birthday.
This month?
Yes. And by the way, tomorrow starts Women's History Month. Yes, in case you hadn't
my birthday.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, my birthday is in March.
Yes, well, your birthday's in Women's History Month. How about that? Speaking to women's history and everything that you experienced through the Women's Ag Organization, then through the Women in Business, and what you are seeing now, particularly since there's so much discussed in psychology today about the business ethos, and you are a contributor to that magazine. What would you say is the greatest difference for women from, say, the 70s?
Having lived through the changes, a lot of my career was in what back then was non-traditional work. And for some reason, I was quite drawn to things that were non-traditional. Like in college, my major was government and economics, and I could be in economics classes where there would be 200 men and me, or I was a management intern at Treasury Department, and all the interns were men. I was the only woman. And by the way, I had an attitude back then, which I hope you'll approve of, but I was aware that what I was doing, that it was pretty clear to me. If you're the only woman, you know you're a pioneer. Also, I was in the rice farming. There were about 5,000 rice farmers in Northern California. There were I think there were 9 women, but of the women who were rice farmers, in almost every case, it was that they were widows. It wasn't that they had gone into it.
Right.
So I was just I was aware that I had a lot of visibility.
Mhm.
And so I had a motto in almost everything that I did, that I wanted to be so competent and also a team member, plays well with others.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to make it easier for the woman who would come after me. I
Mhm.
really wanted to do such a good job that they'd think, oh, let's have women.
Exactly. And that's
And
brilliant. And thank you
however,
for that.
however, uh, those seem that seems like so long ago. It was before the flood, because today those issues just I think aren't there anymore. I mean,
Oh, no, they're there.
yeah,
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah.
but I did. It was terribly important to me to get past the problem of plays well with others. I mean, I really wanted them to welcome me, and I mean, I tried my best to be a good contributing team member, to be
Mhm.
very conscientious, like if there was an assignment, to have it done on time and done to the best of my ability.
Yes.
And to not be, I didn't ever want to be a drama queen. I wanted to be the thing that motivated my actions back then, but the problems were different back then, was I just wanted to be viewed as supremely professionally competent, that I'd never miss a deadline, that I'd uh,
Mhm.
that I would never be a drama queen.
Now, being the only woman, being a pioneer as you were, and having this focus of being supremely competent while being a great team player,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
how
go
did
do that, everybody.
how how did that work? How were you received by the males? Because that's all that was around you.
I hope well, because, all right, I have a theory of life, which is that how people respond to you is little like a mirror, that if you look at them, with warmth and appreciation and, oh gosh, I can help you, you can help me. Yeah, we're going to make something wonderful together. It kept turning out that way. And with the rice farmers, the rice farmers in Northern California in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and after that, I moved east, so I don't know. But during the period when I was really, really active, uh, the rice growers, they're a real macho bunch. And the idea of this woman coming in had to be, unsettling.
I'm
But
sure.
I mean, because I'm not sure, maybe professional wrestlers are more macho, but, this,
Oh, Mitzi.
okay, so how am I going to fit in?
Right?
And I'll tell you the approach I had. It was humility, that I don't know the answers to this, and I'd ask people for advice and help.
Mhm.
And I think that goes over real well. But then there was another thing that I did, which I think assured instant popularity, and it's the following. Uh, I'm a writer,
Mhm.
and the rice growers back in, I think we're talking 1978, had a
Mhm.
very, very big problem, one that threatened their livelihood.
Mm.
And that was, back then, there was the issue of, if you were a rice farmer in Northern California, you really wanted to burn the stubble after the harvest,
Mhm.
because there was this virus, it was called stem rot. And
Mhm.
if you didn't burn the fields, the virus would take hold. And
Mhm.
the next year, you'd grow this nice crop, and then this horrible black virus would attack the stem, and the rice would die, and you'd see the whole field just not producing a crop. So
Right.
the need to burn the stubble was huge.
Mhm.
But there was legislation that was going to prevent agricultural burning, because
Mm.
one of the downsides of it is that it's the smoke goes into the air, and
Right.
who wants smoky fields?
Right.
Well, there was legislation that was going to put the rice farmers out of business by
Mhm.
saying you can't burn your fields.
Mhm.
And I thought, I'd invested my entire nest egg, or at least most of it, enough so that if I was going to continue, I didn't want to lose my farm.
Right.
And I was thinking, what tools are available to me that are legal? I mean, that I can't go assassinate
Legal.
the person carrying the legislation. Probably not the best choice. There might be something more practical. So I decided, and by the way, I'd never had anything published before. I decided to write an article telling about the rice farmers' side of the issue. And nobody had done the research. Nobody had, it was people who hated big rice who were dominating, the airwaves. And I could see their point, because who wants smoke? But I was able to say in this article that the rice farmers themselves, we had taxed ourselves $1 million to learn ways of creating less smoke. And among them, if you have dwarf rice, instead of rice that might be 3.5 feet tall, maybe you could have it 2.5 feet tall. And that means less particulates going into the air. Or one of the really big things was, before, if you're burning your rice, just set a match. I'm not being precise about this, but you burn the field and it just burns. But if you are more strategic about it and burn into the wind provides more oxygen, it burns at a higher temperature, and you don't get the particulates in the air. And if you make sure that your rice is always particularly dry before you burn, again, I'm guessing, so don't hold me to this, but my impression is that we reduced the smokiness by maybe 80%. Maybe it's 75%, but we could substantially reduce it.
Yes.
But nobody knew that this was in the offing. And so I wrote this article saying what we were doing about the problem, and give us a year to put our own house in order. And the person who was carrying the legislation read the article. I placed it in the in-flight magazine of I think it was PSA Airlines.
That is savvy.
Okay,
that is savvy.
Well, because all the legislators would fly on PSA.
Exactly.
I mean, and then I did something else that I'm kind of proud of, but I got the worst picture that you could possibly imagine of rice burning. It looked like, well, I titled the picture "Hell with the Lid Off" to get attention. And I thought it was just going to be part of the article. No, they made it the cover, which meant that people, well, it became required reading for the state legislature. I had, one of the more exciting things that ever happened to me was I could, I'm in my car driving and I'm listening to a talk show and they're talking about me. Oh my gosh. So,
did you have to pull over on the side of the road and listen? I would have.
It happened so often that I would have just been parked because it was,
I mean, just the first time.
The first time, I promise you, I slowed down. But the legislation was withdrawn. And, if you want to be really popular with a group of men, save their livelihood.
Really popular with any group of people, save their livelihood. That was brilliant. I love.
Well, just from then on, I'm exaggerating, but it's as if I could do no wrong.
Well, you may only be exaggerating by a tiny, tiny bit. Now, thank you for sharing that story. That was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And we're running up on time. And that one thing I absolutely do not want to let get past us while I have you here is you are taking on a very, very big project now in terms of becoming a warrior to stop human trafficking and sex trafficking.
Oh, well, me and probably maybe 1 million other people. So it's not like that. Well, yeah, the United Nations recognizes 20,000 anti-trafficking organizations, and you have to be pretty big to be recognized.
Mhm.
But I figure what I can do, what I can bring to the table in this is, because I'm a writer and a speaker, I write articles, and in the last couple of years, I've had published, I think I'm at 120 articles right now.
Mm.
And so what happens is I interview people who head anti-trafficking organizations, and I've asked probably 100 of them, what do you need? And they need money and they need awareness.
Mhm.
Well, when I write articles, they can use those articles in their fundraising efforts.
Mhm.
So I'm not rescuing anybody. I'm not treating anybody, but I hope that I'm helping with the fundraising and the awareness raising.
Mhm.
That's how I intend to devote the rest of my years. Oh, there's one other part, and we're now circling back to Mark Victor Hansen in the biography. Mark thinks that he's seen it, by the way, and he says that this is a book that should sell 1 million copies. Well, I have pledged that the profits of this, the royalties of this, will go to anti-trafficking.
Mm.
So I hope to raise, maybe this may be a pipe dream, but why not think big? I may be able to donate $1 million to anti-trafficking organizations. Nothing would make me happier than to do that. In fact, that's half the motivation for writing this book.
Well, Mitzi, I don't think any smart person is going to bet against you.
Thank you.
I don't think any smart person is going to bet against you. You have your book you're going to finish. You are dedicating the rest of your life to anti-trafficking. If there is one thing that you've been just kind of holding on to, thinking, I'm going to come around to that. I'm going to come around to that. There'll be a moment, there'll be a time. And you feel yourself coming up on that time, that one little piece or dream or achievement that you haven't done. What would that be?
Well, I've been widowed since 2005. I wouldn't mind male companionship, but
you go, girl.
But however, I am really picky.
As you should be. We deserve to be picky.
Well, that's the case.
There you go.
I'd rather be alone than with somebody that I couldn't look up to and admire.
That is a very smart stance. That's a very smart stance. I encourage every woman to take that stance. It's easier to be alone than to be with someone you can't look up to and admire.
Gosh, and I just said that off the top of my head, but I believe it.
Well, those things that come up off the top of our head are often the truest because we didn't contemplate them. We didn't work the wording.
In fact, there's something I discuss with Mark Victor Hansen a whole lot, which is, where does creativity come from? Is it just something inside our brain that's churning away?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we tapping into something? I don't have an answer to that.
I don't either. I have my thoughts, my opinions, but that's for another day.
All right.
Mitzi, I want to thank you so much for coming to join with us today, for giving us a glimpse into your life, giving us a glimpse into the life of a pioneer who was the only woman in many rooms and arenas, and for sharing your juicy victories from helping your tenant recover to helping the rice growers save their livelihoods. I really appreciate that, and great success to you in everything you do on behalf of anti-trafficking.
Well, it's been a real privilege getting to know you and being on your show. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. For all of you who have been listening, we've been speaking with Mitzi Purdue today. Fascinating woman with a unique background. She has seen a lot of the transitions that women have gone through in the last 81 years. Well, maybe the first year she wasn't registering them. We're too busy chasing our pacifiers. But she,
Well,
but she has seen a lot of changes and she brought some beautiful points forward. I trust that every one of you listening gained a nugget, something golden to carry in your pocket as you go forward, to remind you of your own greatness, of your own capacity. As I will do for you, as I always do for you, you know I love doing this for you. I'm going to put Mitzi's contact information that she wants to provide, link to her book, and all of her information on the program notes, so you'll be able to go right there and find them. Be sure, click and subscribe and share this episode with your friend who would like to meet this wonderful woman. And as you go forward with the rest of your day, I'd just like to remind you, you are stronger and wiser than you know.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you received inspiration for expanding your own social innovation and influence. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at lesliemichaels.com/podcast. For more tips, insights, and support in creating a fully audacious, professional, and personal lifestyle you love, visit our Women We Should Know community on Facebook.